Hi, this is Leonard from Master Sprinter TV. Today we're going to talk about resistance training from a sprinter's perspective. So again, the thing we need to keep in mind with resistance training for sprinters, again, we're not looking necessarily, or the focus is not necessarily on max lifts or how much weight we can do in a particular lift, but it's looking at being able to generate horizontal force out of the blocks, vertical force during max velocity, kind of that rate of force development, as far as applying force into the ground at a rapid pace, having elastic stiffness and tendon resiliency, and then kind of stability and pelvic control during max velocity sprinting, and again, just kind of reduce the risk of injuries, because that is kind of really the number one impediment to adaptations and progress in sprint training. So again, with resistance training for sprinting, we're trying to focus more on, we're not looking at aesthetics, we're not looking at hypertrophy, or at least that's not the focus. We're not focused on max lifts. We do want good technique, but what we're trying to look is for transfer of force from the gym and different movement patterns, as far as that's how it's going to help us get out of the blocks, accelerate towards max velocity, maintain max velocity, maintain good coordination, apply force to the ground, and reduce the risk of injury. So that it's not so much about kind of the max lifts, but just having strength that can be applied to sprinting when we're running at 100 meters or whatever distance. So now again, with resistance training, we kind of want to keep these overall cautions inside. Again, we want to look at technique. So look on YouTube for how to properly do any movement pattern that you're considering using in the gym. Use a correct weight that you can do with, say, about 6 reps in good form, and then you can, I say with the exception of cleans. In the case of cleans, you could do those for 1 to 3 reps. But again, we're not looking for ego lifts here. We're just trying to develop just basic strength and power that can be applied on the track, coming out of the blocks during acceleration, during max velocity, and it's just kind of it's a secondary or auxiliary movement outside of our sprint training, but it is a kind of a foundation of power that can be applied to the track. Now, kind of your foundational movement pattern is your squat. Now again, your squat's going to give you kind of lower body strength, your posterior chain, and it's going to be kind of help you with strength coming out of the blocks. Now you've got different types of squats. You've got your full squats, or kind of your parallel squats, which are kind of a foundational movement. Then you kind of can go to, say, like your quarter squat, which is going to be more closely mimic your posture during max velocity sprinting. You've got front squats, which are going to help you more with, say, with power out of the blocks or during acceleration. And then jump squats at the point where you can do we can do a regular squat with, say, at least 1.5 times your body weight. You can consider jump squats, which are very good for explosive power. Maybe even consider a light vest, but certainly I'd say stay away from trying to do jump squats with a bar or additional weight like that. So another movement pattern are your lunges or split squats. Now what these do is they're going to help develop force production on one leg, and kind of your pelvic stability, your core strength, strength in your hip flexors and glutes, and again, this movement pattern kind of transfers very well to sprinting, because again, when you're sprinting, you're not on 2 legs at a time, except maybe right when you're in the block. So most of your resistance training movements, whether it's your squats, your deadlifts, your cleans, and so forth, you've got 2 feet on the ground. But in the case of lunges, you're at least focused kind of on moving one leg in front of the other, and so forth. So definitely your lunges or split squats are a good movement to consider in your program. The next movement pattern is RDLs, or Romanian Deadlifts. Now what these do is they train the hip hinge pattern, which helps to have posture in the max velocity phase of sprinting as well. They help to develop strength in your hamstrings. And keep in mind, during the swing phase, a lot of times the hamstring is more subject to injury, so having strength in your hamstrings is certainly of value. So definitely something to include in your program. Okay, the next movement we're going to discuss is deadlifts. Basically, deadlifts allow you to produce force during acceleration. So they're training the posterior chain, your glutes, your hamstrings, your quads, and your spinal erectors. So the next movement is the glute ham raise. And what this does, it helps to develop strength in your posterior chain. So this would be your hamstrings, your glutes, your calves. It's going to help with hip knee flexion. So this is going to help with your sprint mechanics, and then also reducing injuries in your hamstrings. The next movement pattern, again, we're kind of looking at hamstrings. So again, Nordic curls. Now a lot of gyms don't have a machine that allows you to do these, but if you have that sort of setup, definitely look at that. So again, the Nordic curl does help to develop strength in your hamstrings, to reduce the risk of injuries, kind of that eccentric strength in your hamstrings during that late swing phase. And we want to keep the hamstring strong. The next movement are your trap bar jumps. And what these do is they help to develop power without necessarily some of the technical complexities of some of your other movements. It is a movement that is very sprint specific, kind of your triple extension, rate of force development, explosive power, kind of hips, glutes, and quads. And so good movement pattern without some of the technical complexities, say, of something like a clean or a squat. The next movement pattern would be either your standing or seated calf raises. Now what these do is they help with ankle stability as well as Achilles stiffness, and that kind of that force transfer as you're kind of in the toe off phase, pushing off the ground. And so it's certainly something to incorporate into your training program. Okay, the next move is the clean. Now again, this is something you're going to need to learn the technique. This is one where you can probably just do like 1 to 3 reps. Don't focus so much on moving a lot of weight, but again, you're trying to develop explosive power and kind of that rate of force development, applying force into the ground. It's going to help you with your acceleration and kind of neural coordination. So it's definitely a good movement, but just it's one that you need to be a little more focused on technique. And again, we're not trying to get into ego lifts, but again, kind of 1 to 3 reps here. Focus more on speed of the movement, good technique, and less on how much weight you're lifting, because either way you're gonna kind of create a neural adaptation during that pattern. So one movement we'll add to the list here is your leg press. Now again, the leg press is not as specific to sprint mechanics, because it is a machine. It's on a fixed movement pattern, but it does at least develop some lower body strength without kind of the spinal load of your squats, your deadlifts. It's certainly useful, say in a rehab setting, if you're having lower back issues. A leg press is something to consider. But again, get away from the ego lifting, throwing too many plates on there. You still want to focus on good form, and make sure you've got your settings so that if for some reason there's the weight falls, that you've got the catch set. So make sure you've got your catch set on your leg press. Again, here I'm not trying to cover every movement pattern that's out there, but just giving you some basic movement patterns that can be of use to sprinters. There are literally hundreds of exercises you can do, but just trying to give you a few basics that you can look at. And we're not necessarily overlooking upper body strength, but your upper body is more involved in maintaining balance on the track, so that's not kind of really the focus of this video. But we are certainly the lower body strength is probably of more interest to viewers, and so that's what I'm trying to cover here in this particular video. So another thing to not overlook is to schedule deload weeks, maybe every 4 to 6 weeks or so, into your routine, because your muscles, tendons, and nervous system do need kind of a break every once in a while. So during that phase, you can kind of do a little bit lower volume, a little bit lower intensity. You're still getting some stimulus, but just not as much during those weeks. And then you the week after that, you go back into your regular routine. Now, one other thing we want to discuss is the term CNS fatigue. So basically, this is just feeling kind of flat, slow, or maybe even somewhat unmotivated to lift because you're kind of to lift or even train because you're kind of burnt out or fatigued. So again, this is kind of where your deload weeks come into play. Now, obviously, if you have an injury, which would be kind of a sharp pain, which you particularly feel when you're doing a particular movement pattern, that's an indication you kind of need to kind of back off on that movement, and that's whether it's particular movement in the gym, or also doing sprint training as well. So if you feel sharp pains during a particular movement pattern, kind of back off from that movement for a period until you feel like it's kind of safe to go back. So again, with resistance training for sprinting, we're trying to focus more on, we're not looking at aesthetics, we're not looking at hypertrophy, or at least that's not the focus. We're not focused on max lifts. We do want good technique, but what we're trying to look is for transfer of force from the gym and different movement patterns, as far as that's how it's going to help us get out of the blocks, accelerate towards max velocity, maintain max velocity, maintain good coordination, apply force to the ground, and reduce the risk of injury. So that it's not so much about kind of the max lifts, but just having strength that can be applied to sprinting when we're running at 100 meters or whatever distance. So till next video.